Last week, my husband and I, we were a cross-country ski trip crossing the Hardangervidda in Norway. We are members of the Norwegian Tourist Association that celebrates its 150th anniversary this year. The D&T has a very nice hut system where we make use for about the last 20 winters. We hardly meet and see living individuals, besides some moose, foxes, krauses and one lemming this year. And as a Dutch girl, this is one of the ways I participate and contribute to what is part of the Nordic identity and cultural heritage. So, however, it reminded me last week when I was cross-country skiing that even without seeing individuals, you can participate in cultural heritage as well, and I enjoyed it very much. But okay, having said this, why is Europa Nostra interested in participation? Europa Nostra is interested in participation because cultural heritage matters, the subject we discussed today. And you only have to read our slogan, Europa Nostra is the voice of cultural heritage in Europe, and you will understand that participation, civil society is in our vision and mission. Last week, the president of Europa Nostra, the tenor Placido Domingo, together with our acting president and secretary general, had a lunch meeting with the president of France, Mr. Macron, and his wife, to emphasize the importance of cultural heritage in the 2018 European Year of Cultural Heritage. Mr. Macron has said, and I paraphrase, that he fully agrees that we need to communicate Europe not only in an institutional and bureaucratic way, as it is the case now, but also much more in a way which stimulates an emotional link between citizens and Europe. And this last part, the emotion, might be achieved via participation, in my opinion. This part is also emphasized in the manifesto on participation that was written last May, and which you will find in the copy you saw downstairs, and a lot of you already have this copy. Since the existence of Europa Nostra in 1963, we stimulate involvement of civil society in cultural heritage. We made improvements over the years to reach this aim. First, via the Council of Europe, we are a pan-European organization, so we have more than members of 40 European countries. But later on, we persuaded more and working more closely with the European Commission and the European Union, I have to say, because it's not only the Commission, but also with the Parliament and also with the Council. And as Europa Nostra, we were involved, and still are, but mainly were now, involved in the establishment of many conventions concerning cultural heritage. And because of the subject we discussed today, participation, I would like to mention the Faro Convention, the Convention on the Value of Cultural Heritage for Society. The convention, actually, that Finland signed last June. Good for you. In October 2005, when the convention was adopted in Faro, Portugal, I was there. At that time, I worked at the Netherlands Ministry of Education, Culture and Science and accompanied the Director General of Culture and Media. At that time, the Netherlands government had some difficulties with the right of access to cultural heritage, because it had the opinion that it could not guarantee access, the right to cultural heritage at all times. Human rights in relation to cultural heritage is, in my opinion, complex and complicated. And therefore, I'm very happy that others talk about it clearly, as you can read later in the article of Marlene Bidot in the book, but I'm also looking forward to the presentation of Mikan Sepala, excuse me for my pronunciation. What the Faro Convention has achieved, before the making as well as after it, is the importance, the connection and the conclusion of community in relation to cultural heritage. Since the Faro Convention, there is more and more attention for communities and individuals in relation to cultural heritage. And from an Europa Nostra perspective, I am very much in favor of the convention, because it really fits our aims. Like other conventions, where involvement of heritage communities is very important, like the UNESCO Convention for the Safeguarding of Intangible Cultural Heritage, and their involvement of communities and therefore participation is even a precondition to get the subject placed on the national and later the international list of intangible heritage items. Conventions, as the Faro Conventions, are related to rules and legislations. In my view, the approach of rules and regulations is a top-down approach. However, it tries to stimulate the bottom-up approach. There's always a bit of a tension between both. Being involved in the editorial board of the publication Heritage is Ours and preparing myself for this conference, I came, among others, across the so-called participation framework. Can you please show that one on the... it's just an illustration, but then you know what I'm talking about. You cannot read it, but the participation framework is of Sani and others, and they combined the Willock's letter of participation with Nina Simon's participation framework, and Manu Harayan is also referring to Sani in his article in the book. The participation framework has two axes. A vertical one, which is bottom-up and top-down, and a horizontal axis that shows the different levels of participation from informing, consultation, contributing, deciding together, acting together, and hosting. In my opinion, this framework is a nice way to map different initiatives. We could easily plot the cases mentioned in our publication Heritage is Ours, citizen participating in decision-making. There is more than enforcing involvement of individuals top-down via rules, regulations, and legislation, and that's bottom-up participation. And bottom-up participation is important because participation leads to added value to cultural heritage. People in general and individuals in specific add context and contact to cultural heritage. The added value, in my perception, is the multi-perspectivity in relation to cultural heritage. When we combine... Oh, that's me, but a bit delayed, yeah. When we combine interpretations of different individuals and or group, we get different opinions and might result in a richer content and context in the direct surrounding, in the region, as well as in and for Europe. This fits very well the slogan we used for the European Year of Cultural Heritage 2018 and the Cultural Heritage Summits in June, sharing heritage, sharing values. A precondition for multi-perspectivity is that individuals, groups, communities, governments respect different opinions, interpretations and perspectives, as is also emphasized in the Turku Manifesto. We all know that this is not always the case. Unfortunately, there is a downside of multi-perspectivity, and that is that it might lead to conflicts. It might divide groups, might result in fights, and even wars. Cultural heritage might be a target of conflict, and cultural heritage is contested by definition. Cultural heritage might both divide as well as bring together, and Visna Kisic elaborates more on the subject in her article as well. As Europa Nostra, we try to avoid the first and support the later. We do this in different ways. We advocate for cultural heritage at different institutions and government, multi-level, there's all levels of government, European, national, regional, as well as local. Like we did, together with our colleagues from the European Heritage Alliance for the European Year for Cultural Heritage. We celebrate cultural heritage via the award program, the European Union Prize for Cultural Heritage, Europa Nostra Award. We host together with the European Commission, like we had the award ceremony in Turku last year. In the award scheme, we have attention for participation as well via the category dedicated service and education, training and awareness raising. Besides the other categories which are conservation and research. And one of the winners of the award was Adopt a Monument, you probably all know. That was facilitated by the Pirkanmaa Provincial Museum. In 2016 they received the award. Our 7 Most Endangered program, together with the European Investment Bank Institutes and the Creative Europe program of the European Commission, is also a subject we often use to emphasize our aim. And in this program, participation is also important. An example that was very successful is the Rosia Montana example in Romania. This is a mining region where the local communities stand up to protect an old mining landscape against new mining, which is also a very nice combination to protect the old ones and get rid of the new one. It was supported by the 7 Most Endangered program, and now it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site. And this can only be done when civil society and when individuals really support such initiatives and stand up for preservation of their cultural heritage. And for you, there's also an example nearby, and that's the Helsinki-Malmi airport. Yesterday I understood that it helped that it is nominated for the 7 Most Endangered program, but that the place is still not completely secure. Next June in Berlin, during the Cultural Heritage Summit, within the framework of the European Year of Cultural Heritage 2018, the new award will be granted, as well as the new list for 7 most endangered program will be announced. And we will discuss these items tomorrow during the board meeting of Europa Nostra in Berlin. So I will travel tonight to Berlin, so unfortunately I will not join you for dinner. In the process of cultural heritage preservation, as well as content-wise, we need, in my opinion, both bottom-up as well as a top-down approach. And I presume that Susie Thomas, that she will tell us more about the top-down and bottom-up approach later on. And that means that both top-down and bottom-up approaches of the participation framework should be in balance and is subject of negotiation, or as one of you has said, and I do not know who, so therefore it's just one of you, I believe that heritage activists and specialists will join their forces better in the futures. And I would add, because heritage is ours and it matters. Thank you very much.